Loblaw operates on this massive national scale in Canada. You're generating over 62 billion in annual revenue. You're serving millions of Canadians through hundreds of different retail brands like Loblaw's, like Shoppers Drug Mart, President's Choice, Canadian Superstore. Like there's like million plus transactional messages a year, right? How do you even like begin to think about digital comms?
For us, transactional messages span all of our channels, email or push or an SMS. We spend a lot of time thinking about how often a customer hears from us. So whether it's upstream governance, data-driven kind of prioritization, or staggered deployment, we've considered what the customer shouldn't see. AI can definitely be the driver of a lot of volume and a lot of speed. But I think innovation, the ingenuity of a lot of it, there's something to be said about human instigation for AI and then something around governance.
What's up, folks? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Megan Kwon, Director of Digital Customer Communications at Loblaw Digital. In this episode, Megan takes us deep inside the messaging engine behind one of Canada's largest retailer. We cover how they structure teams into customer journey pods, how they assign Martech tool ownership, why change champions are essential to Martech adoption, and how they manage transactional messaging across dozens of brands and millions of customers. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from two of our awesome partners. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's Knak, and tell them we sent you. This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new Warehouse Native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse Native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. Megan, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited to chat.
Stoked to be here.
Let's chat about your role right now. So you're at one of Canada's largest retailers and you're doing a ton of stuff around customer comms. You've had a cool journey going from Kijiji, but actually starting at Loblaw and then going back to Loblaw. I'd love to just start by like having you walk us through your current role at Loblaw and like maybe touch on the career path, like that span top of funnel to middle of the funnel, e-com, fintech, retail. How did that kind of prepare you for your position right now? Chat about that for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, digital customer communications, I oversee the digital messaging ecosystem for Loblaw. The thing email plus SMS across the enterprise for a variety of different programs, marketing, and transactional content. We do a whole gamut. We work with a lot of different business units and divisions across the entire organization. So we make sure their strategies and programs come to life through the customer lifecycle. And we bring also new ways to start or continue the conversation with our customers back to our stakeholders. So there's a lot of really great kind of relationship building that we do as well. Mhm. When I think about how I got here, I spend a lot of my time building businesses, brand, and growing different products and services through my career. So I am actually the boomerang, like you mentioned. I started my career at Loblaw, had the privilege of being part of the online grocery business while it was growing and scaling. And then I've kind of done a few different things, whether it be paid media, life cycle, CRM, across multitudes of industry, so fintech, marketplaces, retail. I think a lot of that kind of comes full circle for me because where I've landed is bringing all those different pieces together, different aspects of product marketing, growth marketing, and very technical kind of marketing functions as well. And that kind of allowed me to join the team when they're about to start a really cool evolution. So, yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. Like one of the reasons I'm really excited to chat with you today is the scale in which you're operating right now. Like for folks that don't know, Loblaw operates on this massive national scale in Canada. You're generating over 62 billion in annual revenue. You're serving millions of Canadians through hundreds of different grocery and drug stores and retail brands. There's well-known brands like Loblaw's, like Shoppers Drug Mart, President's Choice, Canadian Superstore. Like I learned this just recently, like when I was researching for the episode. When you think about like digital comms at scale, maybe chat about like 2 or 3 systems or processes that your team can't live without in this like crazy scale that you're operating in.
Yes. I mean, a lot of my team spends their day like in the platform of packaging things that we use. So that the bread and butter of our day to day. But outside of that, to manage the size, scope, and scale of the programs and the ecosystem that we manage, we lean really heavily into a lot of our analytics systems. So for us, we lean a lot into the data that we gather and that we have access to. That pretty much drives almost everything that we do. We also use that analytic system to help understand the different real-time signals across the various different properties and platforms that we have to help drive a lot of the experiences that we're crafting and the channels that we operate. When I think about process, it's a little bit different. My team is definitely expansive. They cover all the different divisions of brands that we have within the enterprise envelope. So for a team of the team of my size, a lot of our process and tools are about how we stay connected and together and in sync. So we use a lot of tasks and ticketing through Jira. We've got a lot of documentation and Coda. So everything that we do, we share that knowledge back and forth so that we can continue to learn off each other. And we actually are a really big Slack organization. Real time updates us. We love a good Slack emoji. And for us, that made sure that no matter where anyone on the team is, whether it's in the same office working on a different thing or in a different office working on the same thing, that we can actually stay in sync throughout the week. That's really important to us as a team, just with the way that we're structured and the way we operate.
Very cool. So is it like a big central org for comms that is kind of surfacing at like a dispatch layer almost for all of these different brands that, and then maybe you have like a couple of folks that are focused on just one of those brands? Walk us through like the structure there. Like you said before, we kind of chatted that like Loblaw's exec teams like heavily lean into the capabilities that Martech and RevTech can kind of unlock for your teams. Maybe chat about like how your teams are organized under the hood and get the most value out of these tools.
Yeah. Historically, the team before even my time was very like business focused. So if we've
Okay.
got a pharmacy business, a grocery business, an e-com business, they were structured very much in that vein. It almost was a little bit like a mini agency.
Hmm.
And we retain a little bit of that, right? There's a lot of nuances with the businesses and brands that we operate, and we need that level of expertise and partnership with those specific teams and their needs. But most recently, what I've done is I've also set up a secondary, more primary structure now, which is more aligned to the customer journey. So my team actually also looks over what we call pod, whether it be around onboarding and registration or shopping and post-purchase or the discover phase of the life cycle. And those pods and those activities within those structures are much less business focused and they're much more customer centric. I did that by design because there's a lot of goodness across our ecosystem. That's one of our really cool traits as an enterprise of our size and scale. And there isn't a reason why we shouldn't be able to leverage that and be able to share those learnings across the different brands that we have. So those pod structures really allow us to think about the customer and then layer in all the learnings and goodness that we know about our brands, and then put forward strategies or touch points or new programs that allow us to be more relevant to the customer at a certain part of their shopping and discovery journey with us. So that's a little bit about how my team is structured today. And there's a lot of excitement around that to reduce and break down those silos that come with just being kind of one way.
Super cool. Are those pods like set in stone in a way where like, people come in, they just work on that pod, or do they have like a separate team and the pod is just like part of the work? Like who is in that pod? Like maybe like point in on one and unpack that pod. Really curious.
It's a bit of both. So a
Okay.
really good example is, and I've done it a bit intentionally where in one pod we focus and obsess over how the customer discovers and engages with our experiences. So before they even shop or add to cart, like what are they doing with us as an engaged member of our ecosystem or maybe an unengaged member of our ecosystem? That same pod is also the business lead for our loyalty program. So that was a little bit of like an intentional dual setup for me, because where are we going to get the most energy from? And then where can we then use that as a jumping board for the rest of the businesses? And that's true for all the pods that we have. And they're staffed accordingly and they've been given their dedicated missions. But then what we've done is we've created flexibility within our resourcing within our team so that there's constant consideration for the different needs across the enterprise, which allows a lot more fluidity and connectedness as well.
Can you chat about like ownership for Martech tools? Like when your team is adopting a new platform or maybe migrating to something else. Like I know you guys are using MoEngage on the customer engagement side for some of the transactional comms that you're doing. Like who owns the tool and the outcomes that that tool is meant to drive when you're like buying it? Like how do you assign responsibility so that there's clarity on who manages a tool, who's accountable for results? You just mentioned this like pod structure that you have. I'm sure there's a bunch of different pods that are using the same tools. Is there like a separate like ops layer that kind of owns the admin for that? Maybe chat about that for a bit.
Yeah, I think for us, it's very unique. So we are the ultimate accountability party for platforms around messaging, where like another example is our analytics team is responsible and works heavily with their analytics tools. In terms of the actual like ownership of like who pays for it, that does differ case by case within our enterprise for a variety of reasons. But by and large, when we think about assigning accountability, it ultimately comes down to the team and the structure that is going to be driving the levers of value for that tool. So in the case of our messaging platforms, we become the ultimate responsible party for the tool and how it's leveraged, how are we using it, what's the kind of general governance around the tool, what's the health of the tool, are we using it to the best of our ability? All of that is something that rests with the responsibility of my team, largely because the technical capabilities sit within our team, as well as the processes and the actual accountability to send the actual deployments out. And that's kind of how we've defined responsibility for us on the messaging side.
I'm guessing that training and adoption is probably another mandate that falls under your team there. I'm curious to have you unpack how do you approach training and onboarding to make sure that your team across all these pods is actually using new Martech in their like day-to-day work and is using them effectively. Maybe chat about that.
Yeah. For me, new tools can always be like a 50-50. At least in my career and my time. I see them be wildly successful. I've seen them be kind of like half in, half out.
Yeah.
For me, the big difference of what I bring into my teams now in my day to day from the learning, uh, tying the onboarding and training of a tool to something tangible, like an
Mm.
outcome, like an initiative, like a deliverable. And sometimes it's most of the time actually customer facing, but sometimes even it could be something internal. But attaching it to something that is actually very tangible and a very physical outcome for the team really motivate the individuals or the teams or the pods who are working on onboarding themselves to really get there in a manner that is productive, where they can realize value for themselves. And then to support them, what we do is we actually bring experts in where we can. So where we have partners within the tools that we onboard, we do leverage the resources we have available. So if they've got use cases, if they have support staff, if they have demos, training module, things like that, we do very much try to give that accessibility to our teams. It just depends on how much learning has to take place to successfully onboard.
It makes a ton of sense. I spent most of my career in like the B2B side of the world. So when I ask people questions about like tool adoption and training, my mind usually goes to like the CRM, like being the ops person, supporting the sales team in like a pseudo RevOps role there. Like I just have so many like painful stories about like rolling a new tool that integrates and pushes data in the CRM and then just seeing the sales team just not use like anything that kind of came out of that. Maybe chat about like on the B2C side, like there isn't often a CRM, like the customer engagement tool usually ends up being that like main tool. Obviously there's a bunch of other stuff also, but like how do you integrate new tools into daily habits of your team and like the workflows of the marketers on the team? Do you have like routines or check-ins or I've sometimes even used like incentives for like some folks to encourage them to actually go in there and use it. What are your thoughts there? Like, how do you get people to actually use the thing that you just spent a ton of time like building and integrating within the stack?
Yeah, I will say, like, for us, everything is use case driven. Before you even build it, we've identified or bought it. We've identified what is that use case, and the path to even getting it going is usually tied to some sort of tangible outcome. Then for me, like, making sure there's no friction is really the big priority. Is once the decision's made and we're doing this, check-ins, outcomes, celebrations, even the smallest milestone can be really good, positive, like validation that, hey, the thing that I'm doing is going in the direction that was planned. It's faster than expected, is as expected. I've learned something. So we really use those like little nuggets along the way to make sure that we're positively reinforcing the use of that tool. Maybe not quite an incentive, but an emotional one at that. And then because we attach them to use cases, we as an organization do a really good job of celebrating milestones. So we have channels, we have shout out. We've got a really great like mindset within the organization of just in real time because we are in office most of the week, acknowledging like to each other in person, like, wow, that was really awesome. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations. Nothing really beats that because that really then is a positive feedback loop into the day to day.
Very cool. Yeah, sometimes easier said than done, but I feel like especially on the B2B side, like something that's worked really well is this idea of having like someone that you take aside, they become like your champion, so to speak, and like you walk them through the use case, spend a lot of time with them one on one. They get it, they understand it. You like walk them through how to do certain things. They start using it. They're like your guinea pig in a sense. I know you're also a big fan of like these champions when it comes to changing things internally and like transformation wise when you're rolling out a new platform, sometimes you create like internal change champions. How does your change champion operate for you? And like what impact have they had on adoption for Martech or like peer to peer support across different folks on your team? Maybe chat about that for a bit.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in change champions. They've been a very big part of any change that I've had to navigate through across my entire career. And I think change is really scary, even if it's a really good change, because it's so ambiguous and it's so unknown. And if it's not something that you're used to having to face all the time, which most people are not, even if it's a really exciting change, there's a lot of anxiety around it. So when I think about a change champion for me and the ones that I do have within my team, I really think about the person first and foremost. For me, it's really around like, do they have a little bit of that extra open mindedness to this change? Like, how did they react the first time they heard about it? Could this be a really good challenge for their own development? Like, is there something in it for them that really makes it motivating and self-driving? And then spending the time with them to make sure that they have all the tools to succeed. So do they need extra training? Do they need dedicated time and space throughout the week that we can make work? So they can really get in deep with what it is that they're actually facilitating. And then from there, really letting that flourish as organically as possible because it has to be authentic to them as well. I find as much as possible, I try to create change champions within the team. So there's a lot of peer to peer outcomes.
Hmm.
For me, a lot of my team is very much in the weeds and very much in the day to day operating mode. And so any sort of change champion external, or even if it's from like a leadership position, yes, very effective sometimes. But I think more than not, there's nothing more comforting and kind of like humanizing about change than if someone else who can relate a lot to your day to day says actually no, like it's actually not that bad. Or like, oh, I'm actually this way, not that way. And we face a lot of that. Our organization is constantly innovating and constantly challenging the status quo of what we've got going on. So for me, those are really big moments that help define individual teams, especially mine.
Yeah, sometimes having a champion who's a bit more senior, like sits at the top and has the ability to like quote unquote force their teams to basically like go through it and actually use the thing. But yeah, I totally agree. I think the most effective ones are the ones that are sitting peer to peer on the same level. And there's a lot of like competitiveness with like your peers in that same team, right? Like I don't know for you, like in the B2B world, especially in sales, like there's a bunch of like leader dashboards and like you can see yourself next to KPIs that everyone cares about, like how you're stacking up. Like that's how like a lot of sales teams run. I don't know how it is for your team, but having someone be an early adopter of something and being successful with it and it showing up and translating into the metrics and everyone else on the team just being like, oh crap, like Megan is really doing that thing. Like I've been resisting it because like I'm busy. I've got a bunch of things on my plate. Like I don't want to change to this new thing. I finally just got like comfortable with what I'm doing right now, but that might be that incentive that that person needs because like like we're not doing this just to like create friction in your work. The ops team is rolling
Exactly.
this out because there's efficiencies to gain here and you will be better in your role if you just take a bit of time to go through that. So yeah, like when you talk about this, is there like an example that comes to mind? I don't know how much detail you're able to share, but like I'm sure when you're talking about like a change champion, someone who's like helped you implement something new, whether it's like process wise or tool wise, like what's the first thought that comes to mind there?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned at the top, like we're going through like a pretty cool time on the team. A lot in changing, a lot, um, very dynamic right now. And when it comes to even like changing team structures or adopting new processes, I really love to someone on the team to take the lead and helping kind of debunk the myth that is whatever this change is.
Hmm.
There, like I have a few even just like micro example, if we need to change a process around how we share our business result to our stakeholders, which is very important to us. We're definitely a marketing team first, but we're a very data driven and analytically driven organization. And so my bias is always to tie our results back to whatever it is that we're aiming for from a financial results perspective. So we hold business reviews, and that's something new that my team has never done before. And so how do you create the motivation to think about your space completely differently and be accountable to it with a completely different lens? And I was able to kind of nominate a couple of different folks on the team to really drive and adopt the style in which they wanted to present that. They had the space and the freedom to really like iterate on what that looks like, and ultimately work together to essentially self-drive what that space looks like. And we've come a long way. It's something that we share outwardly to leadership regularly now, and feel the team gets a lot of praise for it, which is really good to hear. And for them to get that positive feedback loop, but that's a really just like even on an internal example of how we create change champions.
This episode is brought to you by attribution. Everyone says multi-touch attribution is dead, but it's not dead. It's just been done wrong. Most tools were built for another era or by people who don't actually run growth. They lean on Google Analytics or whatever the ad platforms tell you. Both are wrong. That's why your CAC looks off and your spend doesn't line up with revenue. The team behind attribution built growth data frameworks for companies like Dropbox, Replit, and CarGurus, feeding into the only MTA platform that delivers auditable revenue-grade accuracy across your entire funnel. It's trusted by over 1,000 B2B SaaS and e-commerce teams, and it's one of Twilio Segment's only 2 preferred partners for marketing auditability. Attribution connects to CRM, ad platforms, data warehouse, and e-commerce stack. With attribution, you can pinpoint CAC by channel, audit funnels across every source, and tie every ad, campaign, and piece of content to real ROI and retention. That's auditable growth from first visit to repeat purchase. Visit attributionapp.com/humans to finally see what's really driving your growth.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero.
2 field forms. Complete context, instant scheduling. Finally, you get to pick all 3 without a single line of code. Introducing Native Enrichment by Revenue Hero. Plug in Clearbit, Crust Data, Apollo, or stack all 3. Enrich all the data you need instantly on submit. Stack your enrichment providers, waterfall your way to clarity. Determine qualification and meeting routing based on enriched information. Layer it onto your current distribution logic. Book more meetings with your qualified buyers. Get started at revenuehero.io.
I want to chat a little bit about transactional messages, like the messiness or the craziness with like all the messages that are going out under the parent umbrella here. We mentioned at the top of the show, like Loblaw operates on this crazy massive scale in Canada. Like there's hundreds of groceries and drugstores and like a bunch of digital channels that you're operating under, some really well-known brands there, but there's like million plus transactional messages a year, right? How do you even like begin to think about how are we going to orchestrate digital comms at Loblaw? I know you're using MoEngage on the tech side for a lot of transactional stuff. Can you chat about transactional messages? Is it just email? Is it things outside and SMS? Is it push? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. For us, transactional messages span all of our channels. So you could definitely receive a transactional message by way of email or push or an SMS. It really is dependent on the business, and it is dependent a little bit on the use case as well. So what is it that we're trying to say and how important is it to get to the customer, and what's the fastest, most secure, most relevant approach? So we take all of those things into consideration. We spend a lot of time thinking about how often a customer hears from us. I think a very interesting nuance about our business, a lot of our business units that are different are also different brands. So we do get a little bit of leeway because our customer is definitely hearing from us from different brands, and the voice to the customer can take different shapes. So that does help us a little bit with the way that we approach our messaging governance. But even beyond that, within a single business unit, you could have a variety of different use cases for which a customer would receive a transactional message from us. And in that vein, there's a lot that we've done to create that sense of seamlessness to the customer. So whether it's upstream governance, so calendars, processes, governance meetings, data-driven kind of prioritization, or staggered deployment. A lot of those things we take upstream so that by the time we get to the point of deployment, we've considered what the customer shouldn't see. There's also sometimes just relevancy. A lot of our transactional methods are timed to release essentially right away. So think about like an order confirmation email. You're going to want to know that your order is placed pretty immediately. Or if you need to return something, you're going to want to know fairly quickly if that refund has been fulfilled. So we work really hard to make sure that the entire workflow is seamless, and that if there are conflicting or coincident messages that could overlap each other, that we plan for those as much as possible ahead of time. We also do work really strongly with our analytics partners on this. So beyond just transactional messages, even in the marketing space or just messages in general for us, we do look at what is the downstream engagement with a customer when they receive a touch point from us. It's not just did you open or click it, but if you're opening everything, clicking on everything, and nothing's happening all the way at the end, to us, that's not even good enough. So we do balance like what the results are with what the channel is saying. And we've even gone so far as in some cases to say, hey, you haven't engaged in this channel for many, many weeks. We're actually just going to suppress you for a little while. You're clearly not engaged, and it's not the right space to be speaking to you, and you are engaging in other spaces. So let's think about meeting you where you are, which is really important to us to be relevant and timely in the space that the customer is comfortable hearing from us.
Yeah, frequency capping and like recency, like caps and like all of the suppression lists. Like it's complicated enough when you run one business with one business unit and one product. Like I'm trying to in the back of my head figure out the instance that you're using to map all of these different brands. Like, can you touch on like how you think about this from like a system level? Like maybe some folks listening like have 2 or 3 products in there and that's already like a bit complicated for folks. Like how do you like even unbox this for all the different brands that you have under Loblaw? Like are they all under a single platform? Do you have different instances of different brands within the same platform and there's overlap of people? And then how do you do the frequency capping if there is overlap of people within different audiences? Like you said, like someone might be shopping at Shoppers Drug Mart, but they might also be like a frequent Loblaws customer. Like, how do you decide too many emails from one brand versus the other? You're canning all of them. I have so many questions, Megan.
We definitely lean into our data first and foremost to help guide those decisions. So we do track our channel health metrics. We do track what the customers are actually doing and engaging with. And we use those as powerful feedback loops to actually prioritize because we have a pretty robust set of tools and platforms. It's almost impossible to just rely on the tech itself. There is a lot of strategy that goes into it. So if we know that, someone shops grocery, doesn't really engage with another touch point, if we know that, we have a very important message that's going out on a particular day of the week, we make sure that there's prioritization built into our deployments. And if we see any of our metrics really deflating or degrading over time, we do take pause sometimes and say, hey, look, like we need to take a beat. We need to really understand what's happening here. And we make some pretty informed decisions from that perspective as well. And very honestly, sometimes like you really just have to make a call. It comes down to we say a lot to our customers very regularly. And we are very multi-channel. Even outside of the channels that I operate, I have tons of partners across the enterprise who are working cross collaboratively with us. And we're always coordinating broadly around like what's being said, what's the core message, what tier messaging are we really going after right now? And how do we ensure that through the various targeting, timing, prioritization that we do, how do we make sure that the customer sees the most relevant to them first, even if they have to hear from us again throughout the day from another brand, from the same brand, what have you, that we've made a very intentional decision around what they have to hear from us first. So that's a big sense of like urgency within our organization. We always prioritize those conversations from the get-go.
I find it really cool that you have a central org that owns or at least is responsible for all of digital comms. I've been part of companies much smaller scale, even like interestingly, way smaller scale, and there's been a lot of internal debates about who should own transactional messages. I think everyone agrees that, marketing messages should be owned by the lifecycle team or the marketing team, whatever. But when it comes to transactional messages, I've been part of a lot of internal debates where I've joined companies where the product team owns transactional messages. And oftentimes, it's set up with an ESP, but there's no like actual automation tool in the middle. It's just like connected directly to SendGrid, and it's just like API based, triggered from the back end. And the dev team, just like where the product team owns all of transactional messages. But then when you dig under the hood, it's like, what are the metrics of that? It's like, oh, well, we don't really know what the metrics of those transactional messages are. We have to send them for compliance reasons, and so we don't really track if they're doing well or not. And so maybe chat about that. Like, how did you were at Loblaw really early on? I'm sure that's like transformed a lot throughout the years. But you're also at Kijiji. Like, I'm sure you guys were doing a lot of transactional messages there too. What are your thoughts on like what team should be owning this product versus lifecycle versus digital comms? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's been a long-standing conversation, no matter what function of marketing that I worked under. It seemed transactional and who owned what is always like an ever-present conversation. Um, we've got a really cool model. I think it's a cool model. I don't know what people think, but I think it's a cool model where we have like built almost like a fail-safe partnership with our product and development teams, where there is a co-ownership of any transactional touch point that goes out. There's a reliance on product and dev. There's a reliance on digital messaging, and there's even a reliance on marketing, to make sure that we're not setting things up with no knowledge that we are actually talking to the customer in that moment. We're also in a really cool position where we have a lot of really cool brands, and we want to make sure that they're represented well in our channels as well. So we've actually, by human design, created an interdependency with our transactional messages so that it's a constant conversation of, is this a point where we need to send something? If so, what do we say? How do we say it? What are we supposed to say? What do we need to say? And that there is actually just, even if it's for a second, the ability to say, is this the right thing to do for the customer? So there is a lot of that intentional design for us, which I think plays a really cool part in all of this for us.
I don't want to say that you won those internal battles, like maybe you did, but I'm sure there's some listeners that are just like, I wish I was able to get to a stage at my company where all messages are under lifecycle or digital comms, and we've got top of funnel marketing stuff and we've got transactional stuff because we're able to lump all of those things together. How, like, what advice do you have for those folks that they're like stuck in those battles about areas of responsibility, and the product team is pushing for this and the engineers don't understand anything lifecycle does? They don't even know what it means. They think anything labeled as marketing is spam and like it should be out of their reach and they should own transactional stuff. Like, what advice? Like, clearly you've gotten to a spot where you're comfortable, you're happy, and I'm sure some listeners are just like, Megan, how did you do it? How did you get there?
See, my big advice in context is everything. So
Hmm.
for me, I think a lot of where I've been able to like find success, because we've created that interconnectedness and dependency around a transactional touch point. I think there's a lot of opportunity for conversation and context setting as to why are we saying one thing versus the other. or, why, like hearing a dev out and saying like, why do you feel that this is the way that it needs to go? It feels intuitive. And for a lot of people are thinking, well, who has the time? Because I don't. And that's fine. Uh, but spending the time up front means you save the time down the line. That's what I've learned both the long and the hard way in a lot of instances. Mm. So I think context is key. Taking the time to like share your context and share your perspective, uh, and then build a process that works for everyone, right? Like no one wants to be shouldering the burden of it, sorry, all the way and then realize that they've missed key partners. So identify what part of that partnership you feel like you can own. For us, like we've identified, like, hey, as a messaging team, we are very much prepared to own this piece. And we are prepared to be partners along the rest. And coming to that consensus and agreeing means that everyone got a little bit of skin in the game now. And it means that everyone's just going to be that much more willing to have the conversation.
Such a good answer, Megan. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. One thing I ask a lot of folks on the show, and I've chatted with people that are at different stages of adoption or even willingness to explore with AI when it comes to customer comms. A lot of folks think that the future is machine-led digital comms, where the human is still kind of in the loop, but when it comes to figuring out what is the right message to send to what segment of people, a lot of people think that like that message is just going to be in this big database of potential messages to deliver, and the segment is just going to be all machine learning led, where there won't be a life cycle or digital comms person deciding, okay, we're going to do a back to school campaign in September, this is going to be the copy, and the list we're going to pick is this SQL query because like in the past this resonated. Like instead, it's just going to be like you log into a tool and the machine tells you, hey, we should do back to school tomorrow. Press yes to agree or not. And then behind the scenes, they're the ones picking the segment. They're the ones deciding who is likely to be receptive to this message or not based on a bunch of historical data. But there's like propensity models built in. It's like predicting the likelihood that someone. What are your thoughts there about like that whole part of like digital comms? Do you see yourself kind of evolving to that? Do you think it's kind of crazy? There's always going to be a human needing to decide. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, hot topic. My personal take on it is you're always gonna have like you can't beat some kind of human component to this. Do I think that there's gonna be a crazy amount of efficiency, a crazy amount of like just output with the rise of AI? Absolutely. I think we're kind of already there, to some degree. That being said, I think there is some merit to the fact that AI can definitely be the driver of a lot of volume and a lot of efficiency and a lot of speed. But I think the innovation, the creativity, the ingenuity of a lot of it, um, I think there's something to be said about like human instigation for AI and then something around like governance. I mean, do I at some point AI is gonna like outsmart most things? Probably. I'd be remiss to say no, but like I do think that it is getting to a place where like iterations are going to be like a non-starter for AI. Like there's just nothing that beats something that's going to spit out like 100 new things in like 10 seconds. I don't even think I could think of 100 words in 10 seconds. Like it's just not possible. Um, so I think there's a speed advantage, but I think if we can think about AI as like your partner in crime versus like the thing that's coming for you, that's probably where we're going to get the most out of it. Um, because then you learn to live with it and learn to utilize it and harness it and use it as a jumping board, and you'll be jumping a lot is kind of my thought process around it. But it doesn't have to replace. I think that is a debate that's probably still going on. I think the jury's out on like where everything lands with AI and how much adoption and too much adoption. But we're really excited about it at Loblaw. We spend a lot of time getting excited about it. We're doing a lot of really cool things with it. And my team is just scratching the surface on how they can get benefit and value out of it, which they absolutely can. So my vote is keep the human, but find a way to make it work for you.
Yeah, I totally agree with your perspective. I think there's probably a bit of like self-preservation in like our perspective with like, we've been doing this for decades plus. Like we understand like the human's role in this, and we didn't even touch on like empathy and the role in
Totally.
communications and all that stuff, right? But yeah, there's a lot of excitement, and for everyone who is excited about using AI as a tool and like a superpower for you, you log on to LinkedIn and you just see like 7 people just post about they just laid off like 70 people on their team, and they're now just like 3 people, and their goal is to do this and do that with just like 3 people on the team, and all these like AI agents and people sharing like org charts of AI agents. And you can't help but feel like you're so far behind when you log on to those tools. And I'm sure a lot of those people posting all that crap, like they're not really as advanced as like they're making it seem to be. But like, what advice do you have for folks that are feeling a bit behind? Like you work at a massive enterprise, like huge scale. You understand like the practical realities of the pace of change and transformation at enterprise. And like, we can't just say, yeah, we're going to roll out AI agents that are just going to do all of our digital comms for all of our brands for like billions of messages that we do. Like, how can you reassure the humans here that like, yeah, AI is changing stuff. Like you need to like, be curious and learn, but relax. Like the stuff that you're seeing on LinkedIn, like we're not going to be like out of a job in 5 years, knock on wood here. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I have this conversation a lot, like in my personal life. I think
Hmm.
it's such a hot topic, and it's obviously very prevalent professionally, but I do like my tagline is just chill. Um, in the sense of like it is very difficult, like in all seriousness, to not think about the possibility. But I think when you're faced with something new and disruptive, much like most of the last, call it 25 years, have been since the turn of the century. Um, I think like the natural curiosity of like, how do I see myself in this? Like, what do I engage with? How do I engage with it? What could I do with it? I think that's the part of it that when if there's a bit of time to lead into that would be where I would say spend time there. Spend time just hanging out with ChatGPT and see what happens. And not in like a this hangout, but like seriously think about like I have a question. I want an answer. Like get really pointed with it. Because it doesn't have to be scary. I kind of said it before, change is scary. AI is change. And it could be really cool or it could be really scary. But it's changed nonetheless. So I try to be a student in a lot of these like change times and all these different trends. I'm usually pretty curious about like how could it affect my life professionally and personally, and do I care for it? And that's the other thing, like you can decide how much you want to care for it. I think organizations are making decisions, and that's one thing. But at a personal level, like you are still a customer to someone. You are still an individual to someone. Um, in that way, like if you're not enjoying something or you're curious about something, like share that feedback. Don't be shy about that because that for me, the way that we keep driving it forward is when people start engaging with it and give their feedback of what's good and what's not. That will probably make the biggest difference on the trajectory of where some of these changes are going. And the last that I'll say is like, I don't know how best to phrase this sometimes, but the best way I can say it is I don't know where AI is going to get that like spark of an idea from somewhere out of nowhere. And I think that is something that maybe we don't put a lot of stock into, but AI can do really cool things, but can it replicate that random moment while you were riding a streetcar or in the car or talking to someone where you just like had an idea and then ripping off that and deciding if you want to care about it or not care about it? Mm. All of those levels and those moments, I haven't seen that yet in the AI space. No doubt, I'm sure some version of it is coming. But that's why I think like humans are going anywhere because especially in marketing, like a lot of really cool things come from those little moments. You can't really beat that sometimes.
Yeah, all those like shower thoughts that just randomly come to you. I had a cool episode with my co-host Daryl about like what are some of the roles in marketing that are potentially best positioned to resist like all the change with AI. And one of them that I made the case for, based on your idea there, is like, product marketers, customer marketers, lifecycle marketers, people that need to focus on empathy. Like they're like the empathy barometer of customers. Like no one is closer to why do we exist? Like what are the pains that we're solving? And these people need to come up with like leap of faith ideas. And an LLM can come up with some cool stuff, but it's the ideas and the suggestions are all based on things that have already been done. And maybe it's like two things that have already been done together and it's still kind of new, but it's not like the leap of faith that comes from someone that is so close and so empathetic with the users. Like you talk to 5 people every day that use the product. And I don't know, like I feel like that part is really AI resistant. And yeah, folks on your team are probably pumped about that perspective.
Definitely. I could not agree about that. I've been thinking a lot about the product marketing space recently, and that is really where a lot of my thoughts have been is like the value product marketing delivers around understanding the needs and the dynamicness of needs for a customer. So cool.
Megan, this has been a super fun conversation. It's flown by. I really appreciate your time. We got one last question for you. You're a marketing comms director at one of Canada's largest retailers. You're a team leader. You're a keynote speaker, but you're also super active. You're biking, golfing during the warmer seasons. And here in Canada, when the snow comes, you're a tried and true snowboarder, a skier. One question we ask everyone on the show is how do you remain happy and successful in your career? And how do you find balance between all the stuff you're working on while staying happy?
How do I stay happy in my career? I think for me, I stay happy by staying present. Mm. Your career is a pretty long road, not linear by any means. Early on, I felt a lot of stress, like trying to look ahead and making sure I'm planned and making sure that I'm, working on all the right things. That's just like the nature of ambition. But my happiness is really just enjoying what I'm doing, looking ahead every so often, but really just enjoying what I'm doing and making the most of it. And creating some boundaries. Like I do very intentionally like walk away at certain parts of the day and remind myself that I really need to work on my golf swing sometime and, spend some time outside. And that for me creates a lot of balance. I'm extremely extroverted and I have a lot of energy usually. So I need places to put them. So if I've got plans to golf or to snowboard or to get out for a bike ride, usually that keeps me pretty happy.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, Megan. Thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, I really had a fun time.
Thanks, Steph. It was awesome.